Good morning, everybody. I'm so tired. I spent like all night listening to the same album, Smashing Pumpkins Adore. Um, they had the deluxe edition on Spotify, and I was like, you know what? I wanna make all 6 hours of this deluxe edition, but I ended up just falling asleep to the sounds of Billy Corgan. Um,
Not surprised it took you all night then. That's
yeah.
monstrosity.
6 hours. Holy moly.
What? What? It's a good album. I think it's
Great.
misunderstood. You know what's slightly misunderstood is this director, at least for me. We're doing John Hughes. Don't worry, Aiden, our co-host, isn't here at the moment, but I'm not going to be as harsh as he as he was on David Lynch. We got a lighthearted director here, and we this is as per Andrew and Vanessa's suggestions, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Zeitgeist of the '80s. To be honest, like I'm sure at the time, if anybody grew up in the '80s and you saw a trailer on the television, and could you tell if it was a John Hughes movie even without seeing anything like nowadays they're like directed by.
Well, to
Um,
be fair, I was only like 1 through 4 in the 80s, so I probably didn't know.
I mean, I'm a '90s kid, and I can kind of speak to that. Where he seemed to be in like I was a kid who would notice names in the credits, and he seemed a name that would pop up fairly often, whether he was directing or writing.
oh
So
yeah,
I saw a good chunk of his resume, but there were definitely some surprises for this week too.
awesome. Tavi, any surprises for you?
Well, I had seen three of these already, so I kind of knew what I was going into, and I guess he has a certain formula about his work. And although I guess his early films are more like I don't know, team films, and
Oh,
the
absolutely.
latter half is more, I don't know, adult. I don't know what's the term here.
Yeah, like
They're
at least
almost like polar
the
opposites.
protagonists are the young characters at the start of like the first half, and then you get more of the adult protagonists later on. There's an interesting
Yeah,
divide there.
it was enjoyable to watch this because I think we did. I was Malik and Lynch the last ones we did. So, and these are short too, like 90 minutes about per film.
I'm a big fan of 90-minute runtimes, so
Definitely.
We're gonna rank
Oh,
these films, all eight from the year. I'm gonna butcher this. 1981,
84
84.
84
and 91.
to 91 to 91. Yep. Of course, he did write some other material afterwards. What I thought was interesting is that his latest story that he penned was Drillbit Taylor from 2009. What year did he pass away? It was really sad.
It was around that year, yeah.
Andrew, do you want to kick it off for me?
Sure, so I'm not sure if this will be like a controversial not to have a particular one last or not, but my number 8, I was torn between two. I ended up going with She's Having a Baby. Wasn't sure I would ever return to it, which probably says something about how I felt the first time. Unlike the other Hughes films up to this point, the start feels to me like it could have been made by anybody. It's kind of felt like a movie in a sea of other movies. Like I've seen variations of this story before. So I didn't find that all that compelling to start. And I think we have some
Yeah.
tonal issues here too. Like on the one hand, you get these silly flashbacks or bizarre fantasy sequences. On the other times, I'm not sure whether they're trying to be dramatic or funny. I'm not opposed to these things in principle, but they just don't really land together to me. And most of the jokes they were going for here were not that funny to me, just kind of odd. I think the biggest hurdle for me in the bulk of the film are the main characters. I wasn't necessarily convinced on the chemistry between the two leads. So it was hard to get a good standing on the relationship and be charmed by it. Kevin Bacon strikes me as somewhat bland at the beginning, as Jake, and Elizabeth McGovern fairly distant as Christy. I get the sense she's supposed to be a good person, and we do see her consistently show admirable qualities, but her character doesn't really connect emotionally with me for at least most of the runtime. And it probably doesn't help that the big fight they have feels a bit over the top and out of place. I didn't really get a sense of her perspective much at all until the baby storyline kicks in, which is where I thought the film picked up. There are a lot of Hughes I'll commend for being light on plot, but for a significant chunk in the middle here, it has the consequence of feeling a little unfocused and not in a way that's entertaining. Maybe the film spanning across years makes for the characters feel more like sketches. I'm not sure. That could be it. So if I had to sum up these issues, it would be that it has a bit of an identity crisis for what it wants to be, even more than Jake the character does, or at least an identity in a way that works for me. Fortunately, I do think it picks up steam in the last half hour or so, around the time the dinner with the parents and the fertility storyline. This whole baby angle is a sitcom cliche, so it might be a bit familiar to stand up too much, but I do think it gets the characters and tone better in this final stretch. There's a cute pregnancy montage that starts giving the sincerity I was missing earlier on. Christy being the calm and composed one is a nice touch, and we get her best qualities on display in these moments. The final montage with the great Kate Bush song is clearly the emotional center, and it seems to be showing the dynamics I wish we had had more all along. So maybe there's something to be said about Jake's arc being the point of the earlier distance we saw. Maybe Hughes was using a lot of autobiographical anecdotes to form this, but I don't think that alone can justify how for the first hour or so it wasn't all that engaging to me. Well, I don't think it was the most original idea to begin with. I do think execution is what hurts it the most, and when it does do it better, it kind of exposes why the earlier stuff didn't work as much for me. I'm mostly left thinking, if only this was about a 40-minute runtime instead. So this one I'm giving 2.5 stars. It's watchable, but I really didn't like it as a whole, but there's some good qualities to it. And that's number 8.
Nice. Well, I have a different last spot here. I have the last directed film, Curly Sue, from 1991. Honestly, I found this pretty bad. There's like a storyline of like a homeless orphan and this con artist or whatever, and there's an accident that they can happening which helps them they get a place to crash with this like a rich divorce lawyer. And yeah, I think this is sort of like I don't know, is this like a family movie or something? I don't know, but I found the humor quite wacky. I didn't find it really funny. I'm not sure maybe I laughed once, I don't remember, but it's like this weird sounds happening every time there's like comedy. It's very cartoony, and I didn't totally hate this movie, I guess, but it's very bland. It's just it's almost kind of tough to say a kid to be annoying, but I guess I'm a little saying that Curly Sue, I found her to be a little annoying. Just there was like some scene of she started to sing the national anthem in the middle of the night, and I was just okay. I guess we're doing that now. But sure, there's still heart to this movie, and I kind of like the adult leads here, James Belushi and Kelly Lynch. Maybe if you could do this again, I would maybe just do a rom-com with those actors. I don't know. I would honestly drop Curly Sue. I didn't find her that interesting. It's a bit hard to say maybe, but
So Allison Porter was on The Voice. It's like a singing competition, and
yeah. Well, she sings if she sings the national anthem herself, it's sang pretty well. But my score is gonna be 2 stars for Curly Sue. Honestly, it could be 1.5. I wouldn't need to watch this again, really.
All right.
I didn't find it funny, but I thought it had still heart, so maybe I'm gonna give it 2 stars.
All right, so my bottom is the same as Andrew's, and it's She's Having a Baby.
Oh,
Is the only one out of all of these that I'd never seen before. And it's kind of one that people seem to have forgotten, and I totally see why, because I hated it. A lot of what Andrew said, I totally agree with. It's basically the same stuff I have. I didn't think there was any much chemistry throughout most of the movie between the main couple. And it was kind of like at points, it's like, why am I even watching this movie? Why was this even made? Like, I don't care about these people. I kept forgetting their names. Like, even in my notes, I just have like the wife, the husband, because I just couldn't even care about them at all. And like, I found Kevin Bacon's character so unlikable. I couldn't stand him for most of the movie. He seemed to hate his wife, is what I kind of got from it. By the end, yes, when they decided to have the baby and everything came together there, it did get a little bit better. And that whole last sequence with the Kate Bush song was the best part of the movie. But it was almost like too little too late for me. It was just like, well, yes, this is a good part, but it still doesn't really totally redeem this movie for me. And Alec Baldwin's character as a friend was totally pointless. I don't even know why he was there. He was just
Yeah, I agree.
like,
It was,
how are these people even friends? Like, he doesn't even seem like a friend. He's a dick, basically. Like, he's trying to get in with his wife, but trying to separate them, and like, he doesn't really add anything to the movie. This whole stretch of time that they go through, like, it's not always totally clear that we're going through the years too. Like, I don't know. It just seems like random vignettes, basically. And I don't like that as a storytelling device unless it's done well, and it's not done well here. Those fantasy sequences irritated the hell out of me. Like that one with the lawnmower when he was mowing his lawn, and then all the people started this like Broadway dance sequence, and I was just like, what the hell am I watching? Like, why? And it just went on for way too long. So there were points in this movie like I was just kind of mad. It was an easy bottom for me. I gave it like somewhere around 1.5 or 2 stars. I don't know. I will never watch it again. Really didn't like it. So I guess I'll go with a 1.5.
sounds reasonable. I'm not going to be reasonable. Oh, I feel mad. Well, She's Having a Baby is not mine. Yeah, my bottom is 16 Candles. I have no patience. I have absolutely no patience for this. And honestly, it's just the unfunny ethnic jokes. It's like completely unnecessary to me. They milk it in, you know, especially I can't even repeat some of it. It's just there's so much Asian hate, and it seems to be a movie about date rape. And I don't know. Maybe I'm not mature enough to handle it. I can understand and appreciate the aesthetic, and of course, Anthony Michael Hall. Got to say, this is his most annoying performance. It's just awful. I do love the soundtrack. Soundtrack is pretty killer, and like I said, the aesthetics. You know, you can tell that he really tunes into the culture of the '80s, and I do appreciate that a lot. But it's just a movie that just kind of went through me. Maybe I'm crazy for that. Maybe I'm too much of a millennial that I just don't want to see it again. But I don't care. I'm going 2 stars. It's not bad. You know, I've definitely had worse on this channel, and 2 stars is it sounds like a reasonable ranking to me. Yeah, sorry, it's I'm sure you guys have a lot more positive things to say about it. Maybe you can change my view on it, and I'll rewatch this episode like 2 years later from now, and I'll probably have a little bit more of an open mind to it. But I can't. I can't. It was too much for me. But that's not the only 2-star film I have. So
3 out of 4 different bottom picks. Interesting. Well, it'll probably be a bit before I start talking about one of those. But I guess we can move on to my number 7, which is Curly Sue. That's my second of 2 new watches that I had to do for this ranking. And the one I knew pretty much nothing about going in. I guess it's fitting that this is the only 90s film here because it definitely has that 90s string score. It's also like more urban than you usually get with Hughes. Here they go for the city. The setup of the film was working pretty okay to me, actually. more than expected. I think that probably falls on the Bill Curly Sue dynamic. Unlike Tabby, I actually thought that Curly Sue was a good character, but Allison Porter did a good job. She needed a specific personality, and I think that she pulled it off pretty well. So that was actually my favorite aspect of the film. I don't normally care for Jim Belushi in the roles I've seen. Here, he kind of has like a discount Bill Murray energy. So I guess that's good in a sense, but it isn't up to that level either. Despite the good things, I can't really call this a classic by any stretch. It's pretty silly situation comedy premise. The execution a lot of the time isn't all that funny. There are a lot of cliches that you might expect here. You know, the whole poor man and young girl get a makeover, the benevolent rich lawyer learns how to have fun, the snotty fiance gets his comeuppance, all that stuff. I've seen that so many times. Maybe it would have worked as a kid watching it. And that's probably where a lot of goodwill comes, because it is familiar in that way. There's also some tonal friction again, like with She's Having a Baby, this time between wanting to be this sentimental family drama, but also a slapstick comedy. And I guess Hughes always kind of balances these two things a little bit, but here it just seems like a bit tonal whiplash. You have a good playful moment here and there, but several extended set pieces I'd just rather not be here. The amount of punches to the face in this film gets really old after a while. So I'm still at 2.5 stars for this one. I didn't know what to expect going in. I did think it was a little bit more focused than She's Having a Baby and had some good qualities as well, but I can't quite get any higher than that.
I actually thought we might have more Curly Sue at the bottom, but I honestly thought that was the film Vanessa was talking about, but in the chat earlier, but I got it wrong. It's okay.
I thought it could have been Curly Sue too, but I guess we're on the same page there.
Yeah. I don't know, is this gonna be controversial, but my number 7 is gonna be Weird Science.
Ooh.
From kind of his peak time, I guess. This is in between Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller. So, I don't know, like, I seem to have a problem if film starts to annoy me. Because I found both this and Curly Sue kind of annoying. I thought the humor was just too much and a lot of effects, wacky effects happening. And I found a lot of their humor was like, I don't know, I seem to have a problem with sort of a more cartoony approach of reacting to situations. But I actually really like Bill Paxton in this film as a supporting. He's such a dick in this movie, and
Very good.
I found he's the funniest, definitely, in my opinion. So the premise is the two leads, teenagers, build their fantasy woman, played by Kelly LeBrock, and there's like plenty of weird things happening after it. I don't know, I thought the house party was pretty long happening, and then the like first thing they do, they go to like this sort of bar or something, and I don't know, a lot of odd things happening. I don't even know what's sometimes a little my problem in this one. I guess I found some of the supporting actors to be more funnier, and
It's definitely a camp movie.
yeah, I think you're right. I don't know, was this rushed because he like did 4 movies in 2 years. That's more than what Woody Allen makes. Don't need to come back to this one. Maybe a low 2.5.
Love it.
So Vanessa.
So my number 7 is Curly Sue. I'd seen this one, but it was a long time ago. I didn't really remember much about it. So like everything other than that, I remember very well and have seen many times. But this one was a little less clear what I would think of it. I couldn't really remember it, but I don't know. It's definitely not up to the level of the other movies ahead of it. There's a lot of cliches, like Andrew said, and I feel like a lot of the time it's trying so hard to make us feel bad for the situation, which it's a horrible situation that they're in, obviously, but like it's like really milking it sometimes, and it's almost like, I don't know, too much for me. And I didn't feel like, especially that whole plot point where Bill ends up falling in love with Gray, the lawyer, like I didn't feel that from them at all leading up to through the movie. Like I didn't find there was that much chemistry with them to make them have that ending. So that also really was a point that I didn't like about it. And like Curly Sue, she was good. She wasn't too bad, like for what the movie was. But it was very slow moving, I found. And that's one thing I find with Hughes at his worst, the movies are very slow moving. And this is a big example of that, this movie. I'm never gonna watch it again. Like it's not worth the time. It felt really, really long. And yeah, it's just not that good. It is better than She's Having a Baby. I didn't hate it. It was decent, but that's about it. So I'm going 2.5 stars. I don't even really have that much more to add about it or say about it. It exists.
Yeah, I understand that quite a bit. It's kind of interesting so far. We're a little bit split. I don't think you or Andrew have had any of the child-focused films just yet, but Tavi and I have had one of each. So that's interesting placement there. My next one is She's Having a Baby as well. I didn't like Kevin Bacon's character at all either. It almost feels like one of those. I don't want to say Martin Scorsese because he has way more class than that, but like American Psycho type caricatures. You can tell. I mean, what year this is, like 1989 or is it 88? I think it's one of the two. At this time, hair metal was dominating the airwaves, and framing tonally feels light and cheesy. It's also like heavy-handed in a proto-camp way that's so disgusting. I didn't like Alec Baldwin's character at all either. It doesn't even feel like a stamp in modern cinema. I don't see it. The dream sequences were really, really poorly executed as well, especially at the beginning. John Hughes has a special place in my heart, and I can't spoon feed these types of bad films anymore. Maybe I'll go back to some of these if I feel so inclined. However, especially with my bottom three, I'm definitely not. 2 stars again.
All right. I mean, so far, Vanessa and I have been on the same page. This might be where it diverges, maybe. But I do think the rest of the films are a big step up overall from the first two. The next three are kind of in a little pool together. So I decided to go for my number 6 with Weird Science. And this was the other one that I had never seen before, although I did know at least the premise of the two teen boys conjuring up this fantasy woman. It's very unique to the Hughes catalog to have it become like a straight up science fiction fantasy film, because everything else is pretty grounded in reality, even if it's a little zany. This one's even a little Halloween-y. At times it definitely challenges that line between attempting to show horny teenagers as portrayed at the time and just straight up objectification. I do think the path the film eventually takes helps quite a bit with that, but I guess especially in the early going, I wasn't exactly sure what I was supposed to be thinking at moments, so maybe a rewatch would help there. I don't feel like this is as much of a performance showcase. We do get a good turn from Kelly LeBrock, whose character does have charisma and keeps you guessing a bit there and carries most of the theme. That point at which she meets Gary's parents, it almost feels like it could be like turned into a be careful what you wish for type arc. I'm glad they didn't go that way. That's pretty overdone, and they went a bit of a different way that I think I prefer, because the obstacles aren't so black and white in the end. Like another film to come, I feel there are definitely elements you could completely take out and the film would be all the better for it. In this case, there was a particular stretch that was quite an odd vibe and uncomfortable. That entire bar scene with Anthony Michael Hall and the aftermath there hasn't aged well at all, I don't think. And neither does the 15-year-old Wyatt making out with Lisa on screen. So there's definitely a stretch there where I was a bit unsure what places the film was on track to go. Fortunately, they really reframe it back to the teen life as it goes on. In terms of the science, I was pretty content to go with the flow, as I usually do in these kind of like low fantasy comedies. It becomes very nutty. I was pretty happy to just give in to the chaos there. The biker game, the spells cast on the family members, the various effects of the conjuring, much of that is quite fun. The teen love interests weren't very developed at all. I did appreciate how they wrapped things up for the most part once you figure out where it's actually going to go. As a story, I don't think this one reached the heights I look for from the best Hughes films. And so there were definitely some turns that didn't work for me. But at the same time, it's kind of a fascinating outlier with fun elements and definitely a big step up from Curly Sue when she's having a baby. So I'm at 3.5 stars for this one.
Big jump.
Yep.
Love it.
Nice. My number 6. Yeah, now everyone has talked about She's Having a Baby from 1988. I guess all of the things have been said. I think it's a pretty mid film. Pretty boring, but I do like some of the cameos happening. I agree with Vanessa that the characters are a bit unlikable in this one. I agree with Clay. I remember him saying that the dream sequences are pretty badly made. Also,
It's missing a level of intrigue for me. A level of magic. It's so by the numbers. It feels out of place for 1988.
This would be my the film that it exists, but it doesn't annoy me, so that's why it's number 6. 2.5 stars for this.
So my number 6 is 16 Candles, which I used to love a lot more than I did this time around. Like when I was a teenager, I really liked this movie. Even though I knew there were problems with it, but I don't know, didn't necessarily pop out as much as they do now, maybe. But yes, in retrospect, there's a lot of elements that are very cringy about this movie, looking at it through current eyes, or even really any, I don't know that a lot of that stuff was ever acceptable, really. People can say, oh, it was a different time, but I don't know. Some of this stuff, I don't know if there was ever a time for it. But the movie, especially long, I don't even like saying his name. Everything, the way they got him portrayed, it's not just that the characters are terrible to him. The movie is terrible to him. The gong that goes off every time he appears, and
I hated that thing.
It was just the movie's mocking him. It's not just that because I don't think we're supposed to think that these characters, especially the grandparents, are good people. I think we're supposed to realize that they're assholes. But the movie's treating him like garbage. And that's the part that bothered me more than the characters treating him like garbage. So there's that, which I knew was there. And the whole rapey element, Jake's girlfriend, Carolyn, the way they treat her, yes, we're supposed to believe she's a terrible person, but she doesn't deserve to be passed around like a napkin. The whole way that she was treated was just, oh my gosh. And so there's all of that. But with all of that there, I don't really think that there's much of a story to counterbalance it. When I looked at it now, it was kind of like watching it meanders like some of his other movies that I don't like as much. The whole plot is basically Sam's having a bad day and she's a whiny teenager. Yes, her family forgot her birthday, but she's just so whiny about everything, and it gets to be kind of annoying after a while. And maybe that's me watching it as someone in their 30s and not being a teenager, you know what I mean? It's hard for me to feel that sympathetic toward that, some of the things that happen that she's getting all upset about. So I don't know. It just did not hit as well as it used to when I used to watch it. But at the same time, I mean, I sound very critical here, but I didn't hate it. There's still elements of it that are likable, but I just don't think it's as good as I once thought it was. I gave it a 3.5. It's good enough, but it's not great. And you can tell it's a first film too. He would get better at a lot of these things as time went on. So that's where I have it.
I will say nearly all of these movies are practically almost rewatchable, despite the fact that I have it at my last placement. I will probably watch 16 Candles over Curly Sue or She's Having a Baby, because rewatchability is not a key component of wanting to go back to the film. There are movies that I probably have 1 star and I absolutely hated at the time, and I thought it was the most pretentious thing in the entire universe. But now looking back, it was actually pretty beautifully shot. And maybe I'll put it on as a screensaver while I'm doing some chores around the house, doing what I do. I think John Hughes is a director that deserves attention, especially in the modern era. We could probably pick up a few notes from his directing style. We don't have as many genuine slapstick humor without shame. Everything is just sugar coated these days, it feels. I mean, to give out an analogy, like imagine if The Office was on HBO. Would we have wanted it at the time? Maybe, but it would also be like a completely different reality and probably wouldn't have shaped NBC right now as we know it. So, one of those things. Curly Sue is my next pick, and it's also 2 stars, and I didn't like it because it's just a boring film. Moving on.
Wow, I wasn't prepared to speak so soon. All right, so I was a bit torn on these next two because it's kind of like for different reasons. I'm going to talk about 16 Candles next, which is, I guess, spot number 5. And I love maybe 80% of the elements of this film. And then there's the other 20, which we'll get to in a bit. I do see the Hughes style coming through from the get-go. You get the school montage, the party hijinks, just kind of the way that he just shoots certain details. Just makes it so much more interesting than it could have been just on the page. There's a vision I associate with him. It's relatively light on plot. Mostly just this wedding as a backdrop, so much so that I actually didn't even remember the wedding part from seeing it before. There's world building, but it's mostly for the everyday in these characters' lives. I'm big on slice of life, so that's always fun. You can see he's making his own brand of teen film here that will continue over the next few years. This is the first one. It has a little bit of that rough around the edges in terms of the way he's writing it, but it also has his style. There's some nice human moments here. Samantha and her dad have a nice scene. When we actually get Ted being vulnerable with Samantha, feels a bit like a precursor to what we might see in the film that followed it, Breakfast Club. Another Hughes staple is what I like to call the magical moment, and that's where that actual ending scene, it's just a moment that really lands, just the way they execute it. And I think it's probably why the movie is so remembered, is because it does have moments like that. You know, the surprise appearance outside the church, the kiss over the birthday cake. It kind of have a life of its own in pop culture. Got to give a shout out to the soundtrack, which is reliable in all these high school films in this run. Makes sense being the first. This is the one closest to having his foot in the earlier part of the 80s. You get more new wave, post-punk and the like. And I know it predates PG-13, but I really got to wonder how this is PG. They really weren't holding back in terms of the teen themes. You know, full nudity, and then some of the more problematic elements. So I'd be remiss not to get to the elephant in the room. There are certainly elements here that didn't age well, probably shouldn't have flown at any point, and they certainly don't age well compared to the other Hughes films. You can't consider the Long character and not see it as a highly insensitive portrayal. It's basically a walking punchline. No nuance to be had there, while almost everybody else gets human moments. Apparently that gong thing wasn't in the script and somehow wound up there in the editing room, so the actor himself was surprised when he saw the final product, which just makes it more tragic to me. And then
Really? I didn't know that.
The ick factor with Jake speaking of a wasted Caroline and passing her off to Ted like this prize. General lack of consideration for consent doesn't fly. For me, it doesn't ruin the film. It could. Some other films might just push it that little bit further, and I just would be done with it. Revenge of the Nerds probably comes to mind there. Unlike some other films that might seem a little dated in terms of attitude, this one is definitely noticeable, though. Kind of creates an asterisk to how you feel about it. I can't embrace everything that it is. It has many elements I love about the Hughes filmography, but we will get it in a better package in films to come. On the other hand, what I love about it, I do love. So this is another 3.5 stars.
Cool. Yeah, I have also 16 Candles at number 5. I think it's hard to talk after Andrew. You spoke very well of your thoughts about it. It follows Samantha Baker and on her 16th birthday, played by Molly Ringwald. I think Molly Ringwald is...
She's queen.
Yeah, she's truly great. Glad she's the lead. I remember Clay saying he liked the soundtrack, and I do too. Especially the Thompson Twins song, If You Were Here. It's great song. The film explores her family life and what happens in school, and there's parties and so on. Yeah, there's the unfortunate factors to this film that has spoken by, I think, everyone in this panel, especially Jake and his behavior. And I hadn't seen this before, but I knew the ending kinda. I didn't perhaps realize it's the ending, but the frame of Cake and Samantha and Jake there. And watching the film now, I don't think the ending is Jake now the prize we got. Like, it doesn't really feel like it. The unfortunate truth maybe comes later to Samantha. There's definitely unfortunate things about this film, but I do like a lot of the things happening here, and it's pretty funny, and I kind of like the family scenes and following Samantha and her attitude. Yeah, it's 3.5 for me. 16 candles.
My next placement is probably my most controversial one, I'm going to guess. It's Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
What?
I have never liked this movie as much as everyone else does. I don't know what it is about it. I can't stand Ferris Bueller at all. I don't really like the fourth wall breaking aspect to it. Like that, I just found that kind of annoying. But I don't hate the movie. I just don't like it as much as everybody else does. Like I see that it's like a unique approach to a teen movie. Like it's a little different than his other ones. It's got a different spirit to it. He does kind of do some things with it that are interesting, but I don't know. I just have never liked it as much as like, cause you always hear about how great it is. And I just never have felt that about it. Cameron is probably the best character, but I hate how Ferris treats him. Like I absolutely hate it. And it irritates me. Sloane's
Cameron
just
is a sweetheart. I love Cameron.
yeah, Cameron's great. It would probably be better if it was Cameron's movie, if Ferris was not there. Like the way that everybody worships him in this whole movie just drives me nuts. And like, I don't know. He's just kind of a dick and I don't like it. But again, I don't hate the movie. I like the movie, but there's other movies I like better.
You gotta like
And
the iconic score.
yeah, I mean like it's fine. I don't know. It's missing something for me and I don't even know if I can totally articulate it, but that's always been the case of this movie. And when I watched it again this time, I was wondering if maybe that would change, but it didn't. And I watched it with my family actually, and my kids had never seen it. And my daughter just thought it was kind of lame actually. But my son loved the part where the car fell out of the garage. Like when you pushed the car out of the garage, he loved that part. He talked about it for days. I don't know if he got anything else out of the movie, but he loved that part. But yeah, I don't know. And like the subplot with the principal chasing him down was a little overdone. I've always thought that was a bit overdone. I relate to his sister though, how annoyed she gets about him because like, yeah, I would feel that if I was his sister too. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars. Like again, I don't hate it. I like it. It's a good movie, but I just don't put it on the pedestal that a lot of other people seem to. So it lands at number 5.
Yeah, my next one is Weird Science. I thought the visual effects were so goofy. There's a certain charm to it, like Andrew was saying. It's a bit uncomfortable at times, which is fine. Especially the beginning kind of threw me off. I do love the opening title sequence, but it seems to be the most unique John Hughes film to me. And it's cool that he was branching out. It's 1985, definitely the epitome of the 80s. But I'm going 2.5. I will go up from here. It just seems to me like my bottom 4, they're all segmented. We'll see if I go higher.
So we're in the top half. This one I still have belonging to this kind of middle tier. For number 4, I'm going Uncle Buck. From the get-go here, like think of this. This is sandwiched in between She's Having a Baby and Curly Sue. So it really stands out between those two. We're back into more of like a comfortable Hughes land with like the snappy dialogue and playful character details. And like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles before it, there's a fairly straightforward premise laid out early, nice and neat. Great to see more John Candy. Could have been a very different film in the hands of almost anybody else, in my opinion. There's something full circle about getting the teen elements in a Hughes film again, but with the adult as the lead. feel like the interplay with the kids is great, and where the film really shines. All the performances I thought pretty brilliant. The reason it's not higher is when we get into Uncle Buck as the fixer of problems, I do think there is an awkward blend of heartfelt and mean-spiritedness in the final act. Tia serves as the central arc of the film. There's another film with clearly more blatant concerning elements, 16 Candles. But for something so central to the story, I do think this might impact my thoughts more on the score. I've never been big on that whole trope where you get the over-top aggression to tackle problems, and here they kind of bring it up to 100. The target here, that guy, obviously winds up being a total creep who I don't care about at all, but I also don't necessarily love my protagonist to go to those lengths in their own right. Usually not my preference. So obviously it's meant to be for the laughs, and a part of Buck's character is to have a bit of that screw loose. But I do think there was a potentially a good arc there, so I would have loved for them to handle it in a way with a bit more nuance, maybe where he has to meet more in the middle with Tia. As is, there's something that doesn't quite work in that part about how Buck's approach the whole time winds up basically being vindicated, even as he's straight up committing crimes. And the conflict he does end up having is pretty much unrelated to that. So I guess that's the only thing holding it back for me, because in terms of like just the small details and the performances, it's top tier Hughes. I really like the other elements a lot. Lots of clever observational domestic moments, nice steady pace. So that's why this one it winds up following more in the middle. So still 3
Awesome.
stars.
Three or three.
Stars, yeah.
3.5. Right.
I guess I'm following again Andrew, and we have the same placement for Uncle Buck, 1989. John Candy is the babysitter, and all the things that's happening. It's a fun watch. Gotta be honest, it was kind of a bit hard to place this one because I enjoyed this film, but I also a little forgot some parts to this film. I do enjoy John Candy. He's usually funny, at least in this one too. And I forgot the term Andrew used.
Screw loose?
Yeah, and that creates plenty of funny things around his character. And I'm a Home Alone fan, at least the first one and the second one too. And this obviously has Macaulay Culkin, and Laurie Metcalf is in this film, and I don't know even what my thoughts are really. It's a good film, but maybe I need a rewatch, honestly, get my thoughts right. I would watch this again and maybe show it to a friend. So I have this 3.5 stars. Good film.
Right. So my number 4 is Weird Science, which I guess I seem to like more than everybody else. Some of that might be nostalgia, because there was actually a TV series in the 90s, like a TV series adaptation of Weird Science, which is where I first got to know the story. So they basically just covered day-to-day life with Lisa and the guys, but more like the fun elements of it. I mean, I haven't seen it in years, but that was my introduction to the storyline. And then I went back to the movie and I always really liked it. I kind of wondered going back this time how it would play, because there's a lot of movies I loved when I was younger that I didn't always pick up on, sort of not the problematic elements of it, but like the things about them that are probably have not aged well. But I think that overall, apart from a few of the parts that were pointed out, that this movie does age better for me than I thought it would. Because it basically is, for the most part, other than a few parts of it, like a Cinderella story for nerdy boys. I don't know. And Lisa becomes their fairy godmother, which is a good way to take it, because yeah, like Andrew said, that part where they're kind of making out and stuff in the beginning when they first make Lisa was a little bit like, oh my God, this is so uncomfortable to watch. I'm glad they halted that element and moved away from that when they did. And yeah, like I agree that the bar scene was pretty cringy and it has not aged well. But overall, I think it's an enjoyable movie. I think that it's better executed than it could have been on paper. When you look at the plot of two horny boys make their ideal woman, you would look at that and think that the movie would go in a direction that would be a lot worse than it ends up being. Like, I think it's a lot of fun. And I think the fact that they, in the end of it, they come out with, she helps them get confidence to actually get the things they want on their own, which is a nice touch, I think. And I think there's a lot of heart and a lot of character in it that could have been missing. So I think it's a good movie. It's also 4 stars, so it's not a great movie, but I do actually like it a little bit better than Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
I'll watch 16 Candles still a little bit more first, before I decide to rewatch Weird Science, but we'll see. I'm at lining up Tavi and Andrew. Uncle Buck. Yeah, we got this movie is about family. And Hughes excels at the family dynamics, typically more so in the child-centered films, -1. So let's put Macaulay Culkin on the map. Seriously, John Hughes has an eye for child talent, and he still continues that trend even post Weird Science. You know, I do love the line, we need boys so they can grow up, get married, and turn into shadows, delivered by Tia, by Jean Louisa Kelly. She's sort of a little Miss Know-It-All, and she's a little bit self-assured. I really didn't care for her character very much. And then, of course, we meet Buck, played by John Candy. Very zany. Very, very zany. He wears a wardrobe of choice, which recalls a sneaky little shadowed coat that's as overbearing as the questions he loves to ask and hates to answer. Amy Madigan plays Shanice. She kind of reminds me of like a softcore Natasha Lyonne, and she's slightly carefree. Garrett M. Brown plays Bob. He sort of reminds me of like a future embodiment of that Brian character from Breakfast Club. Marcy, of course, the impeccable Laurie Metcalf. Love her. She's hilarious in this film. I love her introduction where she's equipped with a mace and Buck's like spouting a bunch of vulgarity at his washing machine. It's pretty funny. It's okay. It's not as authentic as the rest of my top movies. The score here is very nice, a little bit jazzy. There's a scene where Buck is playing the piano, like Figaro, and then bam, he just screws up because what's her name, Tia, kind of just comes up behind him, and then he plays this like beautifully discordant sound that I really like. But it's just like those little subtle moments like that I almost pick up on. But this film doesn't have that much subtlety because, of course, the ending is, you know, a little bit dumbfounded. Oh, yeah, about the soundtrack. They use Mr. Sandman. It's originally used in Halloween 2 in 1981 of all films. But now you can't, like, it seemed to me like that was just a trend where a bunch of these wacky, zany comedies started using that song. And it seems like Hughes is such a trendsetter. And I respect it. Take it up to John Hughes for picking the right samples. Man has a good ear. I'm gonna go 3 stars.
Yeah, I can think of other movies that use that song too. So not as overplayed as Bad to the Bone ended up being after Terminator, though. Up to the top 3, and there's another jump here for me. We're just talking about favorites for me now. So I had to decide which one would go in the 3rd slot, and I ended up deciding with Breakfast Club. From the opening moments of this one, you get a sense of what you're in for. An intimate story with just a few important characters, go to the same school, but coming from completely different worlds, so much so that several of them don't even know each other's names. I absolutely love the contained setting films, essentially characters in one place, dialogue heavy. I think something like this or 12 Angry Men, great examples that come to mind. The characters here feel really well defined. The pacing moves along nicely, and the dialogue pretty much sparkles. The interplay, the callbacks, they all feel so well crafted. It really is like a little play that's unfolding. And it thrives on its human moments. The scene where they're all sitting in a circle, you know the one, just so classic, like movie magic. There's humor to be found, but it feels elevated into a straight-up drama once the honesty kicks in here. It feels like we're dealing with like this deconstruction of complex and the harsh reality that bonds formed here will inevitably fall. It was fleeting. Very close to a perfect movie for me. I'm aware that some people kind of have criticisms over the makeover of Allison. I will defend it in the sense that she maintains she likes her usual look, even while that's happening. So it doesn't bother me at all. Maybe between this and the coupling does feel a tad neat for what the movie was going for. It doesn't hurt my opinion of the film at all. Maybe it's the tiebreaker here against the movies I have left. But I'm still going 5 stars for Breakfast Club.
Whoa. 5 stars. And what do we got? 3 left? Wow. See? Take it up to Hughes.
Yep.
3 5 stars, buddy. That doesn't happen on this channel very often.
I guess that's why I'm good that I'm here for this video.
Yeah. What was it? Your ET score? That was 4.5.
4 stars for ET, but it could have been a 4.5.
Wow.
I definitely like Breakfast Club more than ET.
Very cool.
Where it lends up.
Love it.
Cool. I guess also like I don't think Andrew gives a lot of 5 stars or is it music?
He definitely
I don't
doesn't.
remember.
I definitely don't. I don't have many. But it also it helps when you have a favorite that you've seen many times, because I often find if I just saw The Breakfast Club for the first time, it might only be like a 4 or 4.5, but you have that, experience and you keep enjoying it and it keeps improving for you, and so that's how it gets there.
Nice. My number 3 is gonna be a movie. Vanessa talked recently, Ferris Bueller's Day Off from 1986. We are following Ferris and his girlfriend and his best friend skipping school on a hot summer day. Also, never been a biggest fan of Ferris. He's on the line of being unlikable. He's very cocky and there's something about him that bugs me. I think the supporting roles almost carries the film more. Cameron, his character, I like him. I think the fourth wall aspect is pretty cool in this one.
Oh yeah.
Pretty iconic almost.
I agree.
I don't know if I would spend a hot summer day. Obviously, I'm not a film director, but I'm not sure the things they did. They were pretty boring to me, or almost too out there. Sometimes, going randomly to a parade and singing. That's like a movie moment. I actually really enjoyed Ed Rooney, the principal or something, and him trying to figure out why Ferris is not in school. I think he plays it really well, and he's always failing in things he does, but his reactions are super funny to me. Sometimes you can just see from his face that, oh no, there's a dog behind me or something. I don't know, would it go higher if I had some nostalgia for this film? I think it's a good movie still. I want this to be Cameron's film, maybe. I don't know. But it's a fun watch, obviously. I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars, maybe with a plus. So getting close to 4 stars for me. That's my number 3.
So my number 3 is Uncle Buck. I agree with a lot what that was said. I think it's a good character movie. I really like seeing Uncle Buck evolve over the movie and build that relationship, especially with Tia. It would have been nice if he built more of a relationship with the other kids too, but it is nice that they have that bond build up in this movie, because at the beginning, yeah, Tia's pretty insufferable. She's pretty unpleasant, but she's supposed to be. So it makes sense. I guess the violence didn't bother me as much. I can see that though, being a turnoff for the movie, because it is a little overdone when they go after Bug in the end. Also a little confusing that his name is Bug and there's Buck. Kind of a funny little element to it. But yeah, I think it's a good story. I enjoyed watching it again. I hadn't seen it in quite some time, so it was nice to go back to it. Shanice was a good character in there, his girlfriend. I liked what she brought to the movie, and the conflict between them was also a kind of a good side plot to have with the story of him building his relationship with his nieces and nephew, and especially Tia. I just thought it was a good and enjoyable film. I liked watching it, and it's not one that there's a lot to say about, though. It just sort of moves along at a good pace, and I think it has a good story. So it's 4.5 for me, and my number 3.
Awesome. My number 3 is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I like it. I really like it a lot. You know, it's a simple story. Two unlikely characters meet up on a destination to their families for Thanksgiving. It's a little bit fucking crazy though. Like there's moments here that seem just so dark and foreboding, almost out of reach. He kind of carries along the stuff that he's learned in writing the Vacation series, especially the scene where they're both driving on the wrong side of the road. That literally almost gave me a heart attack. Like it was crazy. It was so crazy. But it's also funny. He really employs some of that slapstick. In my opinion, it's definitely the closest film to a vacation movie, like the OG Vacation. If we're talking like sentimental yet a little bit dark, it's this. Steve Martin, awesome actor, awesome actor. John Candy, he's great as well. I gotta ask you guys, are y'all team John Candy or Steve Martin? Because I'm a little bit a teeter between them. Because the first time I watched this, I was like, I don't know, I hated John Candy's character. But I guess it was just, watching these in chronological order kind of made me see that he's actually pretty happy-go-lucky, and there's nothing else to say about it. So it's like, I don't know. I do like the scene where John Candy just starts singing "Meet the Flintstones" in the airplane, and Steve Martin is singing a song at first, and it sounds like a shanty tune, but Candy just quickly interrupts him. There's like funny moments like that. He's just so optimistic, and I really like it. And then there's that whole sequence with Martin and the rental lady where she's like, "Oh boy, you're fucked." There's lots of good moments here, and I'm going 5. Yeah, it's a big jump, but these are the 3 quintessential, my top 3, and I'm sure all of our top 3. Well, excuse me, I'm the Ferris lover here. Yeah, what do you guys think? Do you have more sympathy for Candy or Martin?
Well, I have thoughts to talk about on that, but maybe I'll leave it for the other two till I get to my next film.
I mean, I think that Candy is meant to be the more likable character because Steve Martin's kind of a jerk because he's so judgmental and stuff. Like, I know he's like the point of view character, but I think that John Candy's meant to be more the sympathetic character.
Both great actors.
Oh yeah,
probably one of my favorite dynamic duos in an 80s comedy, to be honest. I like it.
All right, well, this is a good segue to my number 2, because that's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And going into this one, I figured it would probably be 3rd. I've seen it plenty of times before, but having them all in close proximity, this one hit in pretty much every way. We see Hughes veering away from the teen formula that saw him so much success. This is kind of where we shift into something else, and I don't think you could have expected a better result from it. I love how it's, yet again, a simple story at its core. The basic stakes established with the opening shot, getting home for Thanksgiving. And it's like there's not a second wasted in scenarios that on paper could have been mundane, but taken together, the situation goes to absurdity in the best way. Laser-focused pacing, I never felt a lull. When things quiet down, it's more in service of key character moments that are given the space, but it's still economically done. It really is a character film in the end. Can't go far in talking about this film without highlighting what I would say is perfect casting. Steve Martin as the uptight, hapless, straight man. John Candy, a delight as this affable, well-meaning, but annoying intrusion. There's a lot of nuance and humanity there that allows them to go beyond just the archetypes, and that's a testament, I think, to the writing and direction. Del has his flaws, but he isn't an idiot. He can read the room when it gets down to it, and he's very resourceful. Neil has like a grumpy exterior, but he does feel compassion and acts on it, even when he doesn't absolutely have to, like when the train stuff
Makes sense. Yeah.
helps them with the luggage. And while the characters do screw up on occasion, it's an important stroke that the majority of the obstacles in play are more cosmic. As much as Neil and Del butt heads and provide some interpersonal conflict, there isn't really a true antagonist here. It plays like one of those dreams where you can just never seem to get where you're going. And in true Hughes fashion, there's always a point where things get real. I like that the initial explosion between the leads happens pretty early on. There's a certain formula that usually leaves this until the end of the second act, and by defying that and having it early, it really helps it feel like more than just a better version of these other stories. It wouldn't be what it is without fun moments, and you get a lot of that too. The interplay frequently includes like pitch perfect comedic timing. My personal favorite is Del performing the Ray Charles song on the dashboard, just pure entertainment. The conventional premise could have been its undoing, but I think it's masterfully done to make it pretty much a definitive buddy road movie and one of the few great Thanksgiving holiday classics around. But what puts it over the top for me is the ending. You get payoff on the central character dynamic, all the feels you'd want, and it doesn't overplay its hand. And I also want to mention kind of the subtext to that final scene with Susan. Neil's wife and the family side of things do take a bit of the back seat, and it's worth noting there was like an entire subplot planned where she wonders if he's having an affair. We lose most of this, other than an occasional beat, but having that information in mind, it really gives this extra layer to that final exchange.
Was it scraped
I think they
in post?
well, because it's a super long movie, there was like 3 hours of footage, so they took a lot out, and a lot of it isn't surviving as far as I know, which is a shame. But just knowing that there's that subtext there, even if it's not spelled out, adds to it just that little bit more. So that ending works for me every time I see it, and it's also 5 stars.
Nice. Number 2 is his second film, The Breakfast Club, and we are having Saturday at Detention. These 5 teenagers. There's the brain, the athlete, basket case, princess, and criminal. How they're seen. All are different until they start to see their similarities to each other. For example, trouble in family life, like a Hughes film. There's great songs. Here's the big one is the Simple Minds, Don't You Forget About Me. I absolutely love that song. I like most of this film. It's a enjoyable watch. It goes pretty fast. I'm not sure do I personally found the ending of them falling in love. Kind of happened so fast. Paul Gleason's character as the principal, I thought he was funny. Probably the funniest actually. Looks like I like the Hughes supporting characters who are total dicks, but they must be funny. And like Andrew said, I also like the one place setting, which is the school. I've seen this before. I was probably an adult already, so like I almost feel like if I had a nostalgia for this film, I would get it a little higher. But I do enjoy this film. It's a very good film. 4 stars. But other than my number 1, I don't find this laugh out loud comedies. But I do like that they have that sort of heart to it. And perhaps there's different pacing to these 80s comedies. Obviously, I'm a bit younger than that, so maybe I must be wrong.
No, I think it's fair to say, like, I didn't give it 5 stars because of the humor either.
Do you have the connection to the film?
Yeah.
That's the most important part, I feel.
So my number 2 is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It was a welcome change watching the filmography in order from all the teenage movies. It's good that he changed sort of the direction he was going in with his films. It's a classic movie, of course. It's one that we always watched growing up a lot as a family, and I have fond memories of watching it. I like both main characters. I mean, when I was saying before that I think that Dal is supposed to be the more sympathetic character to the audience, it's more just like in a general sense. I do like how they both played the characters and how they both evolved throughout the movie and their relationship evolved as well. And those 2 guys, they have the worst luck. It's crazy at times when you're watching it, just how everything could go wrong for them in so many different ways. That makes the movie, it helps the movie move along. And really their relationship is what makes the movie, how they evolve and become unlikely friends throughout all this, and how they just keep getting pushed together by fate, basically, right from the very beginning is pretty well done. But yeah, I didn't know that about the subplot or the abandoned subplot, but I did kind of pick up that element in some of those scenes that you kind of could tell that she felt that maybe there was something else going on, or that she was suspicious. Like it was communicated in a subtle way. So it's kind of neat to find out that there was actually plans to make that an actual subplot to the movie, because it did pick up on it, so it worked well. And at the end, like you said, like it's the perfect payoff to what's been built up throughout the entire movie, that we find out what's really going on with Del, that Marie's no longer around, that he's just basically traveling and and doing his best to keep going on is the perfect way they could end the character, and then have him spend Thanksgiving with Neil's family is just really that perfect way to end the movie. So yeah, it's a 5-star movie. It's a classic for a reason. And it was really nice to return to it because I hadn't seen it in quite a long time.
It's going to be one of those films that I put on repeat for Thanksgiving. I really mean that. My next one's The Breakfast Club. People like to overanalyze this movie, but it's just simply 5 teenage boys and girls in a figurative, rehabilitating state of combative authority. There's nothing else to say about it. I do feel like it's nuanced. It's pretty interesting whenever these kinds of archetypes are explored, and it's a personal film for that reason. I think I'm going to go 5 stars because, of course, my top 3 are 5. It just doesn't hit the mark as my number 1, which, Tavi, you should know what it is.
I'm gonna keep it as surprise.
Well, there's just the one that I haven't talked about yet. And so that leaves us with Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I've seen countless times growing up, and I think it's easy to see why it would have appealed to me. It's not a kid's film per se, but other than like a few curse words here and there, it's certainly the most family-friendly of the teen films. The movie isn't about sex or drugs. There's more of like this thrilling, easygoing caper ambition here. I love this one so much, it's hard to know exactly where to start. I mean, the characters are iconic. You got this soundtrack that's kind of like memorable, but in a weird way. It's almost the kind of film the list goes on. There's a style going on here like none of the others before it. It's like zaniness, but in kind of like this low stakes way. A lot of the scenes are entrenched in pop culture. The attendance roll call, the parade scene, the museum scene. It's playful, silly, and charming. A movie where you have frequent fourth wall breaks, fun pacing, bouncing around from one set piece after another. And even the supporting characters have their own world going on and feel well defined. The Bueller parents, I really like. Grace the secretary is funny. Jeannie is funny. And it isn't just pure self-indulgence, thrill-thinking. We do get some sincerity in later stages, which gives it just the right touch of depth. It's a fascinating choice to make the sidekick the primary beneficiary of development. I think that's why I'm okay with Ferris being who he is, because a lot of the arc happens for Cameron, and it's allowed interpretations of the movie to run wild a bit if you look around. But even just on the surface level, it's an easy idea to like a teen feels suffocated in his home life, uncertain of his future, and just kind of learning to take a stand through letting loose a bit. I also think it's worth stressing how well this one has aged. It's very funny while completely avoiding any of the more questionable habits that we were talking about in some of the other teen flicks. This, more than any other, feels like Hughes working as this visionary to me. Something as simple as the school nurse going into a classroom or the mom calling the school, there's a certain flair to it, and that really stands out to me, I guess, probably because it's so entrenched in my mind growing up, the nostalgia, but I just think there's a lot of care taken to these details, and they're pretty much everywhere. Even like the mundane aspect of the parents driving home somehow turned into this big climax, this action climax. So there's an assortment of comedic styles here, from the slick meta fourth wall breaks, observational humor, slapstick from Rooney that pretty much sets the stage for the Home Alone film, basically. It's like proto Harry and Marv. So this one's pretty high up there among my favorite comedies and films. A lot of charm, really well put together, just a great time. I can see why Ferris might rub other people the wrong way, but it works for me altogether. Yeah, this one's my favorite, and it's just a favorite in general, so 5 stars for Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Lovely, lovely. My number 1 is Planes, Trains and Automobiles. It's number 1 because I had the most fun watching this. This is John Hughes moving away from 4 back-to-back teen comedy style of films. 2 leads, Steve Martin and John Candy. Both are excellent. I'd say John Candy is I have more sympathy for his character, but I can also kind of see why Steve Martin is sometimes annoyed with him and all the things that's happening. And obviously Steve Martin just wants to go home. There's lots of things happening, so it's gonna be a long journey with these fellas. It's the most laugh out loud comedy for me. I just want to watch it again soon. Probably gonna. Not sure has my brother seen it, so might watch it with him. I didn't have a lot to say about this film. I think the leads are the writing is the key aspects in this one. I have it 4.5, so great movie. Maybe I will get it to 5 someday. Rewatching this. This is very rewatchable. It feels. It was my first watch, obviously. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was my number 1.
Nice. I feel like that movie out of all of them is like the one I'd most want to show somebody and just kind of enjoy the ride with them.
I guess that kind of goes to the Ferris Bueller. Also, you can probably do
It
that
would be a lot of
too
fun.
with that.
I guess you get the humor in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and also the kind of the wallop at the ending to see it all come together. So, yeah, great pick.
Thanks.
Vanessa, yours is interesting. Breakfast Club, right?
Oh yeah, I mean that's probably one of my favorite movies of all time. I've seen it, I don't know, countless times. Loved it since I was a teenager. So yeah, that was an easy number 1 for me here. It was really just placing everything else. The bottom was easy and the top was easy and everything else was a little harder. But yeah, I love The Breakfast Club. I love that he manages to do so much with so little, really, because they're just basically in a library the entire time in detention. That's basically the entire setting, aside from the parts where they're in other parts of the school and in the parking lot. And there's not a lot of like obvious action happening, but yet there's so much happening in the movie at the same time. Like I can watch it beginning to end and not feel bored at any point. I just like how the characters develop and how they interact with each other. And I guess I can see the falling in love part. Yeah, it was fast. I can see where that would be a bit alarming, because it seems like that's one thing that he does have to do in a lot of his movies, is have somebody fall in love, whether or not it makes sense or not. So I can see that criticism, but it still works for me, maybe because I've seen the movies so many times and I know it's coming. But yeah, this, in the wrong hands, something like this could totally fall flat and be just bland and boring and just not very interesting. But he manages to bring all these elements into it, and as you watch it more times, you notice little things. Like you notice that in the beginning, where they have the pictures on the wall, that you see Carl the janitor there is at top of his class when he was in high school, and that juxtaposed with the fact that he's the janitor, which it would be a position that some people would not respect. So it's kind of an unexpected twist. But he is a great character. In the little amount that he's there, he gives it back to Vernon and sticks up for the kids, which I like that element of his character. I like that he's there. And one thing I like about it too is that at the end, we have no idea really what's going to happen after the end of the movie. Like, sure, they could be friends later, or they could never speak to each other ever again. We really don't know. And that open-endedness is kind of cool to me, just to think about what the possibilities are after this movie's over with these characters. What happens? I kind of like that we don't know.
I agree. If there was like some 6 months later, I just don't think it would be the same.
Yeah. That mystery adds to just the magic of that moment in time with their relationship as it's built up in that day together. Obviously, it's a 5-star movie for me. I absolutely love it, and I could watch it all the time, which is rare for me for movies.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you can miss it, huh? I got Ferris Bueller, and I just love how quotable this movie is. And I love Ferris's character. He's smart, but he holds back. He's goofy, but he's shy. He's coy, yet transparent. And I don't know about any of you guys, but Cameron? No, he can't be the main character here. I mean, come on. It's Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Bueller. I can't act worth a shit, but oh my god, this movie, it's so reflective of the digital age. There's a certain anachronistic vibe here. The principal is definitely way more forgiving than the principal in The Breakfast Club. It's also my favorite John Hughes, and I can't really say anything else about it because it's just something about this movie. It's another one I'm going to have to watch annually. It's not a holiday film per se, but it definitely has that summer kick that I love. We did it.
A bunch of different picks at the top, different picks at the bottom. I think we got a good balance. Love everyone's top pick, so it's kind of nice that I didn't have to just speak on one of them. They all got their kind of moment to shine.
Some of them at the
Hmm.
bottom, I just can't. I can't say much. Even some at the top. I had much more to say about the ones in the middle. It's a vulnerability thing for me. I can't express really some of my favorite movies sometimes because it's just hard to. And Andrew, you've definitely been a big help. And Vanessa, so glad that you came in as a guest and you've really
Yeah.
become part of the family. I
Well,
mean,
thanks for having me.
of course. Of course.
Despite the fact that I'm not much of a movie person.
You are. You definitely are.
Just got to find the right movies.
Yeah.
Exactly. Aces, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll keep the train rolling. Please comment your favorite Hughes films, and if there's any lists of this iconic director that you'd love to share, which I think you should, please do. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye. Bye bye.